Welcome to the show. First, we will challenge the old belief that buying a home is always the best financial choice. Next, we will explore why permanent renting can be a strategic path to building wealth, especially in high-cost urban markets. Then, we will lay out the math of opportunity cost, the benefits of leverage and stability when owning, and the crucial idea of the crossover point. Finally, we will give you a practical framework and checklist to decide what works best for your life and goals. Here is our roadmap. First, we will bust the myth that buying is always better. Next, we will unpack opportunity cost and the user cost of owning. Then, we will cover leverage and stability, and define the crossover point. After that, we will shift to why user cost beats focusing only on mortgage. We will also highlight lifestyle priorities. Then, we will show step-by-step how to calculate your personal crossover point, followed by examples and diagrams. Finally, we will test your understanding with quick quizzes. To begin, let's confront the outdated rule that buying always wins. In expensive urban markets, both the large down payment and the higher monthly ownership costs create a substantial opportunity cost. Consequently, permanent renting can sometimes accelerate wealth if you invest the difference between renting and owning costs. This does not mean owning is bad. Rather, the context and math matter. Next, let's break down opportunity cost. The initial down payment and closing costs, plus higher monthly ownership expenses, represent capital that could be invested elsewhere. Historically, diversified equity indexes have delivered higher long-term returns than median home price appreciation. Therefore, choosing to rent and invest the monthly gap, along with the upfront capital, can compound more effectively. Meanwhile, funds tied up as home equity are less flexible and harder to redeploy quickly. Now, let's visualize user cost. Instead of fixating on the mortgage payment alone, consider all recurring costs: property taxes, insurance, and ongoing maintenance. Add mortgage interest, HOA or condo fees, and any utility differences. This total is what you truly pay to use the home. Comparing this user cost to an equivalent all-in rent is far more accurate than simply comparing mortgage to rent. Moving on, consider a simple example. Suppose owning a comparable home costs $4,000 per month, while renting costs $3,200. The resulting $800 monthly gap can be invested systematically in a diversified index fund. Over long horizons, this approach leverages compounding. Naturally, prioritize an emergency fund and clear high-interest debt before investing. Next, let's compare. Renting offers flexibility, lower upfront cash needs, fewer surprise repairs, and the ability to invest monthly savings. However, rents can increase, and you do not build forced equity. Conversely, buying can leverage your down payment, protect you from inflation through fixed-rate payments, and provide stability. Yet, it requires high upfront capital, carries maintenance risk, and concentrates wealth in a single asset. Here is an illustrative example to make the numbers concrete. The renter deploys about $10,000 for move-in, while the buyer deploys around $120,000 for down payment and closing. The comparable monthly cost of owning is roughly $4,000, while rent is $3,200, leaving an $800 monthly gap for the renter to invest. We also assume 5% annual rent growth, 3% home price growth, and 7% equity market returns. Additionally, the owner budgets approximately $300 per month for average maintenance over time. These assumptions are examples only and should be customized to your market. Now let's talk about the crossover point using a timeline. Initially, the renter invests the monthly gap while enjoying lower cash outflows. Over the next several years, rent typically rises around 5% annually, whereas a fixed-rate mortgage keeps principal and interest stable, though taxes and insurance may increase. Somewhere in the medium term, the monthly costs can converge. Later, owning may become cheaper on a monthly basis as inflation erodes the real value of the fixed payment. However, the ultimate winner depends on how the invested difference grew compared to equity built through appreciation and amortization before and after the crossover. At the same time, buying has real advantages. Leverage allows you to earn returns on the entire property value, not only your cash contribution. A fixed-rate mortgage provides partial inflation protection as the real burden of payments falls over time. Moreover, owning can deliver stability, protecting you from the volatility of rent increases, even though taxes and insurance may still rise. Quiz time. Question: what is the crossover point in the rent versus buy decision? Option A: the moment your rent equals the neighbor's mortgage payment. Option B: the future date when renting's escalating cost exceeds owning's relatively stable cost. Option C: the day home prices stop rising. Option D: the month you pay off your credit card debt. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. The crossover point is the future date when the rising cost of renting surpasses the relatively stable cost of owning. Keep in mind that even after this point, the overall financial outcome still depends on how invested funds have compounded compared to equity accrued in the property. Here are the steps to compute your crossover point. First, list your comparable all-in rent and all-in ownership user cost. Next, estimate rent inflation, along with tax and insurance growth, plus maintenance. Then, define realistic return assumptions for investing the upfront cash and the monthly gap. After that, simulate year-by-year costs to locate the month or year when renting becomes more expensive than owning. Finally, compare the cumulative value of your investment portfolio to the home equity at each point to determine which path leads to greater wealth. Now, refocus on user cost. Always compare all-in rent with the full user cost of owning. Include taxes, insurance, maintenance, association fees, utility differences, and most importantly, the opportunity cost of capital tied up. Avoid sunk cost thinking and evaluate forward-looking cash flows. Finally, revisit and update assumptions annually as the market evolves. Second quiz. Question: which items belong in the user cost for owners? Option A: mortgage principal only. Option B: mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, HOA, and opportunity cost. Option C: only HOA fees. Option D: only utilities. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. User costs should include mortgage interest, property taxes, homeowners insurance, routine and long-term maintenance, association fees, and the opportunity cost of your tied-up capital. This provides a realistic comparison with all-in rent. Next, let's move to lifestyle. A short commute, access to amenities, and reduced maintenance burdens can deliver meaningful quality of life improvements. Those benefits may outweigh small differences in projected net worth. Ultimately, align the housing choice with your goals, time value, and stress tolerance, not just a rigid financial rule. Here is a quick reference checklist. First, define comparable all-in rent and owner user cost. Next, list the upfront cash required for each path. Then, set assumptions for rent inflation, home appreciation, and investment returns. After that, calculate the monthly cost gap and your investment plan for the difference. Then, simulate year by year to identify the crossover point. Next, compare the evolving portfolio value to home equity. Finally, reassess annually and adjust for tax, insurance, and maintenance changes. As a tip, use a user cost formula that accounts for interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, association fees, tax benefits, and expected appreciation. To recap the core ideas, opportunity cost can tilt the scales toward permanent renting in expensive markets. Buying still offers leverage and inflation protection, but the numbers must be analyzed carefully. The crossover point marks when owning becomes cheaper per month than renting. Always compare all-in rent to the full user cost of owning. Finally, remember that lifestyle and your time value may exceed small differences in projected net worth. Before we close, a quick disclaimer. This content is educational only and not financial, legal, or tax advice. The scenarios and assumptions shown are illustrative and may not reflect your local market conditions. Please consult qualified professionals for personalized guidance. In summary, calculate and compare user cost to all-in rent, estimate your crossover point with realistic assumptions, and invest the difference consistently if you choose to rent. Revisit the analysis annually and update assumptions as conditions change. Ultimately, pick the path that supports your life and long-term goals. Thanks for watching. To keep this community growing, please like the video, share it with a friend who is deciding between renting and buying, and subscribe for more data-driven personal finance content. Finally, tell us in the comments which side wins in your city and what assumptions you use so others can learn from your experience.